And hello, fellow Raiders. Another week and another video. This week we'll be talking about cleansers. First, what's going on in Raid? We are kind of at the tail end of the Yoshi fusion. I'll have the last shard for him shortly through the spider event. As far as Doom Tower progress goes, I've made it up to 114. But 114 is kind of hard, so I haven't quite cleared that one yet. As far as champions I was working on Dark Elaine, Seeker, and Raglan. And they're basically built. I'm just have to finish up their experience points to get them all the way to 60, but they've got masteries, they've got gear. They will eventually find their way. As far as next champions goes, I'll be working on Candrafon, Sky Shaman, who's in process here, and the Archmage, who's in progress here. They just announced the new Dwarf fusion for April 16th, I believe. And he looked pretty cool, but there are lots of channels that have that information. Anyhow, on to the topic of today's video. We're going to do a little bit of a survey of champions regarding cleansing. What do I mean by cleansing? I mean debuff removers. And the very first debuff remover you probably encounter in the game would be none other than Spirit Host. The Spirit Host has a removal of debuffs on allies on a 5-turn cooldown, and places block debuffs for 1 turn. This is probably the first one you should get, and I would say hang on to her. Probably 4-star-ish range for early game. It does help to have somebody on your team who can cleanse debuffs. Get rid of those pesky attack down, decrease defense, and decrease attack debuffs that get thrown on you by the enemies. You do want some way to remove them. And this guy, or this gal, also throws up a block debuffs for 1 turn, which is 1 turn block debuffs aren't all that useful, but better than nothing. As far as rares go, you don't have a lot of options in the rare department if you don't want to use Spirit Host. But there are a couple. I believe Gator here also has a remove all debuffs from all allies on a 3-turn cooldown. I never had felt the need to build one of these people myself, so I've never done it, but it's there as an option. I don't necessarily recommend it. And Night Revenant also has a rare. This guy? No, it's this guy. Acolyte. He can remove all debuffs on a 4-turn cooldown. So if you were paying attention, that was 1 of each affinity. But I don't recommend any of those guys, though. If you're in the rare category, the Cadillac of debuff cleansers would be in the High Elves. That would be Reliquary Tender with her Ender's Watch skill. Not only does it remove all debuffs, but it puts a continuous heal on all allies for 2 turns. I strongly recommend that when you come across a Reliquary Tender, that you hang on to her as one of your debuff cleansers. This is quite a good skill set to have. She also does a revive on a 5-turn cooldown, so she can pick back up people who have fallen down from damage or other means. Those are really your main options in the rare category. Once we leave the rare category and look at some epics, probably the most famous. I guess, famous might be the right word. Cleanser would be Mausoleum Mage. And it's not for his cleansing, it's for his other abilities, for his ability to put a whole bunch of buffs on your team. Not only will he increase your crit rate, defense and block debuffs for 2 turns, his A3 will also remove all debuffs. The Muscling Mage is also a good debuff cleanser to have in your back pocket. Also very good with this skill. It's usually paired with the Seer champion to nuke down other teams. Another pretty good debuff cleanser is found in the Knight's Revenant. That's a Doom Priest, and that's actually being done by his passive ability. So not only does he heal your team by 7.5% every turn, he also just pulls off a random debuff. This ability is a little different from all the other ones, but it's worth mentioning that he can not only cleanse, but also do a little bit of healing just by taking a turn. So, some folks advocate for him in Relentless. I'm not sure about that, but this is also a good champion to use in Clan Boss for the Spirit Affinity if you need someone to be removing your slow speed and your stun debuffs. Got about 4 other decent options in the epic category. Next is someone in the Ogren tribes, a relatively new addition to the game, who I have not come across yet, is Crunch Killjoy. He can remove all debuffs on a 4-turn cooldown, and his special twist is for each debuff you remove, he's going to put a continuous heal on them. That's pretty good. If you're struggling with Ogren tribes and need someone to cleanse debuffs, this guy's probably not too bad of an option. Although he is a bomb champion, so meh. That's why this guy's probably left on the cutting room floor most of the time. Someone who is not left on the cutting room floor and does see a fair amount of use is Sanguina. This very, very red champion has kind of a unique take on debuff cleansing. On a 4-turn cooldown, she will transfer all the debuffs that she has on her to an enemy, and then remove all the debuffs from everybody else. So it is effectively a full team cleanse on a 4-turn cooldown. She has the transference. She takes all her debuffs and throws them back on her enemy from just herself. So that's probably something worth mentioning. As far as cleansers in the Void Epic category goes, Battle Sage is worthy of a mention. She has a speed aura in all battles by 19%, and her cleanse removes all debuffs. Will also throw up an increased attack buff. So this is an interesting move for if you're building an arena team, for example, where maybe you're fighting a Torment and then you need to boost, and you use Arbiter's turn meter boost, and oops, you've frozen somebody. Now she can come along and remove debuffs. Your mileage may vary. Her A3, though, is not very good in my opinion. Revival on Death's okay, but she just casts the buff and that's it. Personally, I have not built her out, but I've seen other people make use of her. A1 is tactile enemy skill, also something to consider. But she will get the job done, and she's a force in the arena. That's for sure. As far as one of the better options for cleansing is actually kind of a strangely worded champion. This is Skytouch Shaman. Only has 2 skills, well, 2 active skills, the A1 and the A2. A1 is attacks all enemies. She can actually do a fair amount of healing here. But it's her 4-turn cooldown, remove debuffs and Revival on Death, and block debuffs for 2 turns skill on a 4-turn cooldown that is very interesting. Skytouch Shaman in particular, due to her kind of a weird passive nature, uh, usually you see Skytouched in an immunity or an untouchable set, because this can cause quite a bit of consternation. And she's got a pretty good ally HP aura in all battles. So she can not only be healing your team, but she will also buff their HP at the start of every battle. As far as legendaries go, I won't spend too much time on them, but RDL, if you have him build him, he happens to be a cleanser and ally attacker and revive on deather and pretty much one of the in the discussion for one of the best legendaries in the game. Another very top tier legendary that who's a cleanser is Raglan, and Raglan has a 4-turn cooldown on her cleanse. It just does a cleanse and a heal. Her notable ability, though, is her 2-turn cooldown on reviving somebody with a full turn meter. That can be very annoying if you ever fight her in an arena or as you're going up the Doom Tower. She just keeps bringing people back up. Also a very strong aura. Stepping out of the Void legendary champions, though, because who has those? Where some normal legendaries go, Hacker and Smash Lord also has a cleanse and puts block debuffs up for 2 turns. Also heals. So this is kind of a 3-in-1 ability. It heals all allies by 15% of this champion's HP. Most healing is done by the target or the champion who's being healed gets a percentage of their HP back. In this case, you get a chunk of Hakorn's HP back. And in addition to all those things, it also heals by extra if there are already debuffs on the person being healed. So you can potentially heal someone for 35% of their HP if of Hakorn's HP if there are 2 debuffs on somebody, which can often happen. Got kind of a funny A3 where he sacrifices a quarter of his health to do half of his health and damage to all enemies. So your mileage may vary on that ability. It isn't. I would not go through great lengths to make this ability hit very hard, but this ability is very solid. Moving over to Undead Horde, one of the classics. Battle Khazar, another one of those does everything abilities, removes all debuffs, heals all your allies with 2 continuous heals, and does 2 poison debuffs on all the enemies. This is pretty much a beast of a skill, and it's his only skill, really. He's otherwise a very good champion. Can't go wrong with the Battle Khazar. A couple other ones who have the ability to do cleansing, but I don't necessarily recommend. Skartosis is one of them. You might have encountered him in the Doom Tower. He's kind of annoying, but he will also do a debuff cleanse on a 5-turn cooldown. And the more, kind of like Hacker and Smash Lord, the more debuffs he rips off, the better his heals are. His kit is actually not that bad. It's just kind of average. It's up to you if you want to build them or not. Personally, I have passed on building Skartosis. I have 2 or 3 of him, I think, but I've never felt the great desire to build him out myself. And last but not least would be another kind of oddball champion of Verkamkar. Verkamkar's cleanse is more of a removes all provoke debuffs and then removes 1 random debuff from all allies. So if you're fighting somebody who you know has a lot of provokes, Verkamkar can potentially help you out a great deal there. His other ability, or his passive ability actually, is he's immune to provoke himself. So that form of CC is not going to work on him. And his other ability is he can actually do like a remove one random buff ability. And it's got some extra flavor text for heal reduction, and it'll do a decreased defense if it removes 2 buffs. Anyway, so those are kind of the highlighted cleansers. Let's talk about how you build one very briefly. Generally, you take a cleanser and you want to build him with support and defense masteries. This is kind of my example of Hackhorn. Just going to give him extra HP, a little extra healing, and try to cycle back around to his abilities. Mostly I built him for Arena so he doesn't die. He's kind of my current Hegemon counter. He will sit in a Frenzy set, he'll get hit by Hegemon. Resist is high enough that he'll resist most Hegemons. You have to be pretty crazily built to have a Hegemon at 600 plus accuracy. And then you pop his ability, heal everyone up, put the block debuffs up, and you're good to go. Similarly, for a champion like Raglan, I mentioned I had built Raglan recently. Again, I crank her resist up fairly high. I don't have the crazy resist that some folks have, but it's not too shabby. I decided to put her in Relentless. Her A1 kind of helps a lot with boosting turn meter. And she'll cycle back around to her heal ability and her res ability. So you generally build these sorts of champions, have a decent amount of HP, have a good, try to get 2k plus defense. I didn't quite get there, but I can work on that. And resist or immunity gear might actually be good for some of these champions because you want these folks to be able to act and remove those debuffs, which is why I've leaned toward resistance on these 2 champions. For Sky Touch Shaman, she is going to be in Untouchable gear. She will have immunity for 2 turns and resistances. I've got a few pieces rolled up. She's going to probably just do that. She'll probably have Untouchable and Speed just so she can go fast, and pieces like this. So she'll go fast and she'll be immune to her own debuffs for a couple turns. So that's been just a general survey of cleansers, some thoughts on those guys, and hopefully you have at least one of these in your lineup. Like I said, Reliquary Tender is kind of your baseline that you want to have. Just have her go fast. She's an immortal. I had actually built her with attack masteries just to do some damage, but I'd actually recommend more of a support defense build. And you generally want to keep at least one of these characters around to kind of get you through those tough times when you absolutely have to remove debuffs. Anyway, I hope this helps some folks figure out who they want to build as far as cleansers goes. And I will see you guys next week.